Hello, I'm Karen. I'm an independent voter from Michigan. Normally, in a normal election, we have seen exit polling done, and that serves as sort of a critique of the accuracy of the original polls. And I have not heard anything yet about exit polling being done.
Hi, this is Mary from Michigan. My parents were Republicans, and the center-right Republicans I can respect, but as the Republican Party went more and more extreme, I got so frustrated. I wonder how this election can bring back a center-right Republican Party again to work with the center-left Democrats, because we have to keep the center together to keep our country together.
It's Monday, November 2nd, just one day. You heard me. One day from the election, and we here at VFA are so truly grateful for each and every one of our viewers. Today is call-in day at Vote for America, and we will be talking exclusively with the Lincoln Project's own Mike Madrid. And now our host, Lincoln Project co-founder, Jennifer Horn.
And welcome to Vote for America on LPTV. I'm so glad that you're with us today. Can you believe that tomorrow is Election Day? Oh my God, it's already here. It seems crazy that it's this close. It seems even crazier that we are all still just as nervous and worried and concerned about what the outcome could be as we were on day one, maybe even more so, in spite of all the very encouraging news that we've heard out there. I'm so glad that you have been with us through this whole journey that we've all been on. But we're really happy that you're here today. Today's show is going to be a little bit different than normal. It's going to be a call-in show. You're going to have the opportunity to be part of this show, and there are lots of ways for you to do that. We're always looking for those tweets at hashtag Ask Vote for America. But you can actually call in and be live on our show today by using this Zoom meeting ID. Go to Zoom, open up your account as always, and use this meeting ID. Write it down. It's right there on the screen for you. And you may be one of the people that we are able to bring live on the show to ask questions of me, of Lisa, and Mike Madrid, one of our favorite guests to have here. He'll be joining us in a little while, the Lincoln Project's data master. So we're really happy that you can be part of it. Now, the important thing before we start moving forward on all this is tomorrow's Election Day. If you have not voted yet, if you're in a state that didn't have early voting, if you have early voting and you're one of those people who just procrastinates, if for any reason at all you have not voted yet, tomorrow's the day. That's it. You can go to vote.org to find out where you vote, where in your state, your county, your town, where you go to vote. Please do not miss the opportunity to make your voice heard in this very, very important election. After all the work we've done, after all of the efforts we've put into this to persuade other voters, to get the message out there, everything you've been a part of, I would hate for your vote not to be counted in all of this. If you thought you were going to vote by absentee ballot and that absentee ballot is sitting on your counter, do not put it in the mail. Get to your polling place, find out how to get your absentee ballot processed or destroyed, and vote in person. Every state has a little bit different rules about what to do with an absentee ballot that has not been dropped in the mail in time. Get to your polling place. Again, at vote.org, you can find your polling place and take care of it in person. If you mail your ballot today, it will not be counted. It is very, very likely that it will not be received and counted in time. So anybody who is listening and still hasn't voted, you're going to have to be an in-person voter. Wear your mask. Bring your hand sanitizer, put a snack in your pocket, whatever you need to do, get out there and vote. That's what it's all about. So, and also before we get started, I want to give you a quick update. We were talking last week on one of our shows about the pandemic, about COVID, about the record of in the spikes in COVID infections in those areas where the president has been holding his super spreader rallies. And there's some new numbers came out over the weekend that were more stunning than what we even talked about when we were on the air last week. A study from Stanford finds evidence of 30,000 cases, infections of the coronavirus, and as many as 700 deaths that can be attributed to the Trump rallies. That is stunning. It is a stunning lack of care, of dignity, of humanity, of responsibility, of the most basic things that we would expect from a leader in this country. It's just more evidence that Donald Trump is so terribly lacking, which is why we've been here for all these weeks trying to get organized and advance the cause of getting Joe Biden, a man who actually cares about not just his family, but your family, and send him to the White House. That's what this is all about. I'm so happy that our co-host is back with us today. Lisa Senecal, she is co-founder of the Marin Group. She is our resident independent voter here at the Lincoln Project. Lisa, we really missed you last week. I'm so happy that you are back, and I can't wait to hear what's on the top of your mind today.
Thank you, Jennifer. I am so glad to be back. Fortunately, our show puts family above all else, and last week I needed to be with mine, so I appreciate the understanding and the folks who reached out to me wondering why I wasn't here, so thank you. I really do appreciate it. So top of mind for me today is voter suppression and the continued ongoing expansive efforts by folks on the Republican side this election to try to make it more difficult for people to vote. We have seen Donald Trump double and triple down on his messaging that has been driving women, especially suburban women, away from his campaign in droves. But he's also leading a party who is doing the same thing, setting themselves up for the long term, alienating voting groups that will be really critical to Republicans being able to win in the future. And their solution seems to be, instead of trying to find messages and uh, enact policies that will be more inclusive and invite more people into the party, they've just decided to make it more difficult for people who don't agree with them to vote. And they will basically win by voter suppression and cheating. And you don't have to believe me. Ben Ginsburg, who is a Republican super lawyer, he has been working on election law for Republican campaigns for decades now. He had an op ed in the Washington Post yesterday, and I want to share just a little bit of that with you. He wrote, "This is as un American as it gets. It returns the Republican Party to the bad old days of voter suppression that landed it under court order to stop such tactics, an order lifted before this election." So that order had been in place for 35 years and was lifted in 2018. This is a first full election cycle we've had since it was lifted. And here we are with widespread voter suppression efforts during a pandemic by the Republican Party, both nationally and by state parties around the country. And there was a hard look taken in 2012 after the Romney loss, to figure out what it is the party needed to do. And the thought was it needed to create a larger tent and invite more people in. That didn't happen. Somehow that resulted in Donald Trump, and he continues to shrink the number of people who want to even identify themselves as Republicans. So there have been tons of lawsuits that have been filed during this election cycle, and overwhelmingly, the suits that are being filed to make it more difficult for people to vote during a pandemic have been filed by the Republicans, and the Democrats have been responding to those lawsuits or filing suits of their own, consistently trying to make it easier and safer for people to vote. It really isn't difficult to see which one of these two sides is on the right side of history. So I hope everyone is getting out there and voting, that you're helping other people who need access to the polls, that you're reporting incidents of voter suppression that you see. The Lincoln Project has been saying this for a long time now. This really is a choice between America and Donald Trump. So I hope and I truly believe we are going to choose America.
Yeah, Lisa, I couldn't agree with you more. The voter suppression tactics that we've seen in place in this election have been really discouraging, regardless of whether you're Republican, a Democrat, or anything else. You know, our country has an ugly history with voter suppression. And unfortunately, it's not just Republicans, and it goes back to the founding of our country. You know, there have always been people in power who have tried to silence the voices of those people with whom they disagree. We have seen it horribly and violently, violent voter suppression targeted against African American voters, against women voters, as these different groups of people have fought to get their right to vote through the history of our country. In the 60s, when we were passing the Civil Rights Acts and the Voting Rights Acts, that was all about trying to put an end to suppression. And in those days, it was the Republicans who were on the right side, who were supporting and advancing and voting for those laws, and Southern Democrats who opposed it. We have been through so much in this country, in this area, to see the Republican Party revert to these ugly, hateful tactics should break any American's heart. It should not be hard to say that every legal vote that is cast should be counted, that we don't threaten our political opposition with going to jail, and that we don't, as politicians or elected representatives of people, we don't intimidate those who dissent. We don't intimidate dissent. And that is what this has become. You know, whether you're Republican, a Democrat, or Green Party, or anything else, you need to be able to win the debate of ideas. You need to be able to move people's hearts and their minds to agree with you. If you can't then you lose and you work harder next time. The voter intimidation and voter suppression tactics that we have seen engaged in openly by the Republican Party in this cycle are completely anti-American. They go against everything that we stand for, everything that we've all fought for, and really a Republican Party that is going to continue to embrace this as their way of winning, to stand against free and fair elections, cannot survive in America, and they should not survive in America. Well, those are my thoughts, Lisa, on voter suppression today. I appreciate that you brought that up. And I'm really excited about this show. I can't wait. Tell me how it's going to work, and let's get right to it.
Yeah, this show's going to be a lot of fun. I'm so excited that we're doing a college show. So folks, you do have the information there available on the screen. You can get into the Zoom meeting. You do not need a password. There's no passcode necessary. So tweet us questions, join the call-in, just get involved and let us know what it is in these last 24 hours you want to know about, and we will try to get those questions answered for you. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our first question right now, and it is a call from Esther. Esther, it is so great to have you here. What is your question? And first, where are you from?
Thank you. I'm from Saratoga County, upstate New York, this little town, Mechanicville, New York, and I am a registered Republican, but I am voting for Biden. I am so disgusted with the Republican Party, and my question is, and thank you for having me, Jennifer and Lisa. It's an honor to be here and to voice my my opinion. Thank you. Why did this lying president praise his co-Trumpers in Texas when they ran the Biden's bus off the road recently, and that caused his to cancel one of his rallies? That's my question.
Yeah, it's really amazing that there does not seem to be anything that Donald Trump supporters can do that he will ever draw a line and say, okay, that went too far. You've crossed a line of what's appropriate, or in this case, even safe. The actions that the people in those trucks were taking to try to prevent that Biden-Harris bus from being able to make its next campaign stop was incredibly dangerous. And I just think at this point, he is so desperate to hang on to every voter he possibly can, because he knows he is not winning this election, that he's not going to say anything that's going to alienate even one person he might be able to get to vote for him. And it's dangerous.
You know what? Esther's from my old stopping grounds up in Saratoga County. She's just north of Albany County in New York. I love that we've got these Republicans up in my old neck of the woods who are speaking up. And Lisa, it's not just what you're saying. This president wants his supporters to engage in aggressive and dangerous activity. That's what he wants. I hope that enough of them will wake up and recognize that he's willing to risk their safety and their position in civil society to advance himself. This is exactly what he's hoping they will do.
Okay, let's take another caller, Jennifer. Our next caller is Sean. Sean, welcome to the show. Where are you calling from, and what is your question?
Okay, I'm Sean Lamont, and I'm calling from Greensboro, North Carolina. And my question revolves around the Electoral College. We have a Republican chairman here in North Carolina that refuses to say that the Republican Electoral College members will be faithful to the general election outcome. And that has I've received lots of calls and people contacting me, asking exactly what does that mean? Do they have to be faithful? So I'd love to hear, especially on the heels of Ben Ginsburg's article in the Washington Post, I'd love to hear y'all address what we do about, faithless electors.
Well, Sean, thank you for the question and for calling in and being part of this. My notes tell me that Sean is a veteran as well. Sean, thank you so much for your service. We truly appreciate it. That's a question that we're hearing a lot of questions about the Electoral College, about the faithfulness, as he referred to. When people talk about whether or not the electorates are faithful, they mean are they obligated to vote, to cast their votes in the Electoral College in a way that reflects the majority vote of their state? It seems obvious that they would, but there are some limited cases in a limited number of states where it could happen that they don't. So if this is a close election where there's not an overwhelming victory for either candidate and this becomes a question, you will see that it will certainly be the springboard for some of those court cases that will come as a result of it. There's no question of that. And let me also just say, I was a state chairman, a Republican state chairman for 2 terms in New Hampshire, the first primary state in our country, a really proud tradition up there. I am so embarrassed. I'm horrified that we have Republican state leaders who are suggesting that they would engage in this sort of unfaithful behavior when it comes to choosing the next president of the United States. It's embarrassing, but it's also so dangerous for the country for us to go down this path.
Yeah, I hope folks in North Carolina and any other state where they're hearing that this is a potential issue with the electors, flood those folks flood the state party with phone calls and emails. Let them know how
Right.
outrageous this is and remind them this is not the last election we're going to have. So the conduct that they're
We will
willing to take
remember.
part, yes, what you're willing to do this time around,
Yep.
expect that is going to be visited on you in 2 years when the elections are happening again, because people have long memories, and boy, screwing with our democracy that
Right.
way is outrageous, and
Right.
people are going to remember it.
So Lisa, let's take a tweet. What's the next tweet on our list?
All right. So we're gonna steal
that's
a
a good
Mike
one.
question here. Is this an open Zoom or do we need a password? So again, no password. It's an open Zoom. So
Right.
go ahead and just use the link.
Let's
You
show
do
the
not
meeting
need to have a
ID.
password. There we go. So
Right.
please, we have folks who are sitting there waiting to greet you, and we're going to get through as many calls as possible today. So please do go ahead and join the group, and we want to hear from you today. So somebody will greet you. Go ahead and use the Zoom. You can also still tweet us questions.
That's great, and I hope more people will join. We want to hear from everybody. So who's our next caller? I think we're talking to Rich and Lena from Wisconsin. Rich and Lena from Wisconsin.
Yes, that's right.
Thanks for being with us. What is your question today?
Hi, Jen. Hi, Lisa. Yeah, we have 2
Hi
questions, one question each. The first question I have is, related to the integrity of our elections, which is vital to convince Americans to accept the results. My question is, what is the root cause of why so many of our fellow Republicans believe without evidence that mail-in voting is not secure? And what can we do to address this root cause issue?
Right. Well, the root cause is Donald Trump. So for me, the real question is to go a step behind that and say, why do so many of our fellow Republicans just buy any crazy thing that he says and has fallen in line? And I think that as discouraging as it is as a Republican of principle, to see so many of them, I think that there are an awful lot of people out there who think that his anger and his division somehow speaks for them or somehow advances their cause or their concerns, and there are people out there who buy into these things. We should take this an opportunity to reassure people. Mail-in voting and absentee voting is extremely secure and nearly free of fraud. It has over decades of analysis of these votes. It has something like a 0.0025% of fraud. And I think how do we address that is we make sure that, one, we maintain those processes that protect it and keep it as credible and as low fraud as it is. And then I think people like you and I, Rich, have to become voices. We have to, when this election is over, we have to continue. We can't think that because election day is past that we don't have to worry about this again for 4 more years. We have to become really clear, loud voices continuously as we move forward from here. It's a great question. And Lena, I know you have a question as well.
Yeah, it leads right into this. Because I feel like,
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I need to go address that.
dogs too.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel.
Go ahead.
I feel like Donald Trump was elected as a result of our broken political system. And so, is there a vision for the Lincoln Project to continue after the election to help us fix that broken political system? And if so, what are the priorities after the election for the Lincoln?
That's also a great question. And I'm a big believer, all my years in politics, we worry about what happens after the election. Like it's election day tomorrow. Everybody watching should be reminding the people in their lives to get out and vote. But yeah, the Lincoln Project is going to continue. Because remember, our mission statement wasn't just to defeat Donald Trump at the ballot box. It was to defeat Trumpism. And we've seen that Trumpism has taken deep root in the Republican Party. We know that there are a lot of Republican senators sitting in the U.S. Senate right now who are not on the ballot yet. They will be in 2 years. They will be 2 years after that, who have protected this president, who have enabled this president, and who have contributed to just how dangerous he has been. So I can tell you that one, the Lincoln Project is not going away. Two, we remain committed to our mission to defeat Trumpism. And, just as a way to sort of frame that for people, I've never thought of the Lincoln Project as a pro-Democratic Party organization or even an anti-Republican Party organization. We are a pro-democracy organization. And so that fight continues, and I can assure you that we're going to continue to be a voice in it. That was a great question. I really appreciate it. Misa, do we have a tweet?
We do. Let's go ahead and jump to the next one. So besides voting and pre-election phone banking, etc., what can we do post-election to ensure all votes are counted? This is another one of those times where people being incredibly vocal is so important. Right. There are first of all, there are going to be legal challenges. We know that. And so there are legal teams that have been put together on both sides. And so certainly Joe Biden and other groups have attorneys ready to go in and challenge any shenanigans that the Republicans are doing to try to suppress votes that should be counted. And they are trying to make sure they are not. So that's the legal challenges are one thing. But it's also another case of going and speaking out, of making those phone calls to your representatives to call the state party and just keep hammering on the fact that this is a democracy, especially Republicans. If you see that this is happening, you need to let folks know they're going to be held to account, and that whether
not just the parties, Lisa. Not just the parties. Let's remember, in the majority of in all of these states, it's the Secretary of State's office who's going to certify the outcome of the vote in your state. And in many of those states, the Secretary of State is also elected. Regardless of that, if you really think that there is something happening in your state where votes are disenfranchised, where they're not being counted, where they're being inappropriately disqualified, make a firm but respectful call to your Secretary of State's office as well, that you expect them to conduct themselves under both their state and federal constitution, and that you expect them to protect the process that makes sure that every vote is counted.
Yep, absolutely. A lot of those secretaries of state, unfortunately, and the elected AGs seem to be taking marching orders from the president and the national party and state parties instead of doing what they were elected to do and they swore an oath to do. So absolutely, there are a lot of people who need to be held accountable for the actions that they're taking right now.
It sounds like we've got a lot of people waiting to join the show. Our next caller is Janine. Janine, thank you so much for being here. What is your question?
Howdy, I just wanted to
Janina, I apologize. Janina.
No, it's okay. Good afternoon. Thank you both, Lisa and Jennifer, for speaking and for being here today. And I think my main number one question as a Texan, I have conservative and liberal viewpoints across the board, and I want to know what is the path. I think this week will have visceral reactions no matter what the outcome is. And I want to know what our path is towards healing, because I appreciated what you said about preserving the democracy. So how do we talk to each other in a way that is not going to be defensive or volatile?
Yeah. I love that, Janina. Thank you for being with us and for asking that question. We've spent a lot of time talking about that on this show. We had a great, for folks who didn't see it last week, Dr. Art Markham was terrific on this topic as well. And I remember that one of the things he said was the first step to healing is for us as individuals to decide to take the first step, whether it's with a family member or a neighbor or anybody else. Like, be the first one to reach out, to be the first one to take your signs down once the election's over. Be the first one to ask a neighbor maybe that you haven't spoken to in a while, how are their kids doing? Reach out to your sister or your brother or your uncle or whoever it is, and don't discuss politics. Just call and ask them how they're doing. Be the first one. As a nation, how to heal as a nation, I think the first step has to come from Joe Biden, frankly. He's got an enormous responsibility on his shoulders. He's a Democrat. I expect that he's going to be a president who leads as a Democrat, but he has made an enormous promise to our country to be a president for all Americans, and that he will be somebody who builds his presidency around the effort to help us heal and help us unite. And I think that if we can all recognize when he does that and make ourselves part of it and become a voice for that, and kind of follow him in that effort. And I think anytime we want to really unite the nation, what is the first, what is the first issue, the first thing that we can all unite behind is that we need to preserve our democracy, that freedom and a free and fair vote and individual liberty and the rights, equal rights under the law, justice. Those are things we should all be able to get behind. So I do think that there's a great opportunity here. I think Joe Biden is going to be a leader who can do that for us if we are all willing to be open to it.
Yeah, the other thing I would recommend is those of us who are there are going to be people on the winning and the losing side, and I believe the winning side is going to be Joe Biden. So I'm going to speak from that perspective. We need to not spike the ball. And it's going to be tempting to go onto social media and be able to pound our chests and say, right, we told you so, and really create an even more toxic environment. That is going to do absolutely nothing to begin healing our country. That's going to put folks on the other side in an even more defensive position. And that doesn't do any of us any good. It's momentarily going to feel good. In the long term, it's going to feel lousy. So a little bit of generosity and keep it classy, folks. We don't need to go down to that level. Let's go ahead and take another tweet. So my question is, what impact do you think independents will have on Biden's chances of winning the election? I'm going to jump on this one because I'm an independent voter and have been pretty much my entire life. So independents are going to have a huge impact on the outcome of this election, and more people are identifying as independent. There is a smaller pool of self-identified Republicans at this point. So even when you're looking at Trump winning a certain percentage of the Republican vote, that's a smaller total vote than it was even 4 years ago. So independents are breaking toward Biden largely around most of the country. So that really is a huge swing vote that this time is swinging toward Biden and Harris.
Yeah, and we see so many states, for example, like New Hampshire, where there are more registered independents or undeclared or whatever your state calls them than there are registered Republicans or registered Democrats. So the other thing that's interesting from a strategic point of view, from the campaign's point of view, you may call yourself an independent, but the campaign knows what your voting record is. They, or at least in the states where you have to choose Republican or Democratic ballot in a primary, they have that information. They've been messaging you from that perspective from the beginning. So independents are, they've always have an enormous influence over the outcome of these elections. And we're going to take another call now from Michael from Cleveland, Ohio. Michael, thanks for being with us. What is your question today?
Hi. First, I just wanted to thank you for the great work you guys are doing. My question sort of looks forward beyond the election. It's an idea that I sort of thought might have legs, but I'm curious as to what people who are conservative or independent think of it. And it's this, that the Lincoln Project has said that one of the things it's looking for is to defeat Trumpism in the future. It seems to me that the Republican Party has been more or less compromised by elements that it doesn't want to associate with any longer. And so I'm wondering what the viability would be of creating an alternative conservative party, let's say call it the Conservative Party, that in the beginning would serve as sort of spoiler party that would draw voters away from the Republican Party and ultimately could potentially replace the Republican Party. And it could also have the benefit of weeding out the sort of white supremacists and religious extremists who are kind of poisoning the party as it stands today.
No question that and any attempt to start a third party would have exactly that influence, that effect that it would pull voters away from. And I have to say, what role the Lincoln Party would play post-election in any of these kind of theoretical scenarios that people are thinking about really is, just can't be answered, really can't be spoken to at this time. To your point, though, Michael, when you said the elements in the Republican Party that they don't want to be associated with anymore. I think the first step would be nice for the Republican Party to say that they don't want to be associated with these elements anymore. Because while I believe that millions and millions of Americans across this country who are still registered Republicans outright reject those influences that you talked about, white nationalism, extremism, some of the violence that has been taking place in our streets. Unfortunately, Republican Party leaders have not denounced that. They've stood with the president and they've defended a lot of this. And so, if they're unwilling to denounce these things, then there's no question something will come of that. A new party, a new effort, a new more people becoming independent and organizing that way. There's no question that the outcome is going to be that votes will be taken away from the Republican candidate.
Right. The Republican Party is really ensured its own demise at this point because they've
unfortunately at this point,
situation. People don't want to be associated with that any longer. And when you're going to welcome with open arms white supremacists and neo-Nazis into the party, you're going to have the good principled folks not want to be associated with that anymore. So I don't know if the party thought it had a short-term gain by doing this, and they've really just gambled away the future of the party, which is, we need a two-party system, but we don't need a party that's going to do that. So we are going to move away just momentarily from all of the wonderful calls and questions that we've been getting so far. And I want to give a big shout out to everybody who has been sending in their voting selfies and tweeting them to us at the hashtag Vote for America Selfie. It has been so wonderful to see thousands of these coming in. And as we've seen them coming in, there's a real theme emerging. And that's been especially exciting for me. It's been undeniable that we've seen women coming out in huge numbers. And one of these tweets really summed up what it is that excited me so much. These two women who happen to both be decked out in their Wonder Woman garb ended up in line together voting. And it's really wonderful to see. These two women are grabbing onto the power that they have, and they're just the tip of the voting iceberg when it comes to women. We have women of different races and generations, lifelong and first-time voters coming from across the country and the political spectrum. And we are all harnessing our collective power to say enough and to vote Donald Trump out of office. This feels like the first big collective voting flex by women. And I have a feeling that after we have really grabbed onto and recognized the power that we have both in the 2018 and now the 2020 election, things are going to be different in the future. It's not going to be easy to ignore women, and we're going to make sure that we're heard. So Thank you, everybody, for sending in those selfies. Please keep them coming. Hashtag Vote for America Selfie. They're wonderful to see. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have heard from so many people who wanted us to have Mike Madrid back on the show, so we're excited that he's going to be with us on the other side of this quick break.
Dear Donald, we at the Lincoln Project just want to say it's okay.
Okay.
Seriously, we know you did your best.
That was the original.
But this whole being president thing isn't for everyone.
No, get those lights off! Off!
It's the hardest job in the world.
Lucky I brought some notes.
And it takes a lot of qualities that you just don't have.
You're going to be fair.
Like compassion, human decency.
If you don't mind, Mr. President. Come on.
And basic reading skills.
Yosemite.
But don't worry, you've got so many other qualities.
Handsome, thin.
Beautiful.
Like dancing. Kind of. Actually, forget dancing. But you're great at remembering things.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Thank you, everybody.
And I'm sure your kids are going places. So don't beat yourself up. Not everybody can be a two-termer. Well, this guy was. Oh yeah, that guy too. Okay, ignore that. It doesn't matter, because losing doesn't automatically mean a loser. Or a failure. Or a national disgrace. Who even said that? Not us.
That's really bad reporting.
Well, okay, we did. And do. And will for a long time. And yes, most of America will come to the same conclusion.
We're last, meaning we're first.
And sure, historians will document you as being a blight on America's presidential legacy. And yes, future generations will refer to you as that turd sandwich that accidentally won an election one time.
And you'll develop turd, like a turd mentality.
But hey, at least you're rich. Am I right? Right?
Welcome back to Vote for America on LPTV. We're so happy to have you with us today. This show is all about you. You can tweet us, you can call us, you can join the Zoom. We're so happy to have you and to be able to answer all of your questions on this day before Election Day. It's a great chance to get anything you're still concerned about answered and figured out. I'm really happy to welcome our next guest. And there's the meeting ID right there. I mean, go to Zoom, sign into Zoom, and then use that as your meeting ID. There's no password. You get right into the waiting room, and hopefully we'll have time to get to all of you, have your chance to come on live and ask us your questions. I'm really happy to have our next guest with us, Mike Madrid. He's one of my co-founders here at the Lincoln Project. He is the data master, and he is probably the guest that we get the most feedback on. Mike, people love when you are here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's always great to be with you, Jennifer.
Good. I'm glad to have you. As you can imagine, the day before election, everybody's kind of wound up and nervous. And this is and you and I have been in politics, for so long now. I have to say, longer than I have even. And just saying. This is the worst day. Today and tomorrow is the worst day because there's nothing we can do. It's done. You've done it. All we can do is just keep telling people to get out and vote.
That's all you can do. I kind of find a weird calm.
Do you?
Yeah.
That is weird.
It is weird. I don't have that same anxiety that I have for the 3-month buildup to this. But let me also say, we're about a year out from when we launched this.
When we started this thing, yeah.
So, this whole thing has come full circle. We've tapped into something I think extraordinary. The messaging that the both of you guys provide here on this channel is just remarkable. And it's really what I think the next 48 hours are about.
Right.
There is only so much you can do. There's the
and it's less than 48 hours, by the way.
It's less than 48 hours. The ads are placed, the get out the vote programs are running. Everything is being launched. there is nothing more that you can do. I think some people do, to your point, feel a little bit helpless about that. Maybe it's just the exhaustion of it all, but we're stopping kind of all the execution phase, and now we're just kind of watching the numbers come in
as it starts to come in.
Exactly.
And reminding everybody there's still time to vote.
There's absolutely. This is when it's all happening.
This is
right?
it.
Yeah.
So I get the first question from Mike Madrid today, and then we're going to get to a lot of our audience questions.
That's the easy one.
So this is going to be an easy one for you, probably. Nate Cohn had some numbers out last night showing that Joe Biden leads Donald Trump in the 4 states likeliest to decide the presidency. And you guys can see that up on the screen really quick. It shows Biden up 49-43 in Arizona, 47-44 in Florida, 49-43 in Pennsylvania, 52-42 in Wisconsin. So to kind of set the stage for the second half of the show, I guess not the entire race, but let's look at these 4 races. Nate Cohn says these are the 4 states most likely to decide the outcome. Do you buy his numbers, and what do you really think will they hold?
So there's a little bit, huge fan of Nate's work. We took a little bit of a different tack. 3 of those states we agree with wholeheartedly: Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Florida. We'll talk about those. Wisconsin has been so remarkably consistent. We actually invested earlier in North Carolina as our 4th for a specific reason, okay? Early voting state. It was the state that voted the earliest. We began investing very heavily in there, trying to get Republicans to peel off of that. It got a little bit squishy towards about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but the numbers have rebounded back, and it looks like Biden is actually in a position to win North Carolina.
Wow.
But
that's huge, right? I mean,
let's
emphasize that. If the Democratic nominee wins North Carolina, that's a big deal.
It's a very big deal. It's not as big as Florida, but it's about as close as you get, because every piece comes off of the chessboard, really starts to strangle the map for the Trump campaign. They need to win everything.
Right.
And then we have to keep that in mind, including the expanded battlefield. But these 4 states that Nate has are absolutely critical. Wisconsin has been, I think, a linchpin. It was the one that was perhaps the most shocking to the Clinton campaign in 2016, losing it by a handful of votes. It's been remarkably consistent. Biden has never really pulled below 48% there. He's now above that magical 50 mark. We expect he'll stay there. Wisconsin, I think we feel really, really good about. The others are a little bit more variable. Right. Florida, of course, is Florida.
Florida's what gives me agita. Yeah.
And we've got, just keep this in mind too. All of the maps that we have built, all of our data and political work has been assuming Florida did not go our way. So there's a little bit, if anybody wants that, hopefully calms a couple of nerves. We've invested heavily in states where we think that we can win without Florida. We've been in Florida, don't get me wrong, aggressively going hard very early, especially with that critical senior citizens vote, which we're doing very well with. Feel good about it. But we have a plan B, as I always say and advise my political team. You always have your plan B. Florida is looking good. It's trending Biden. I'm not going to make any calls on that at this point. Florida's going to be Florida. And like I said, we are planning for a more conservative position around that map. The way we get there, really quickly, if I can keep going, is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, to me, is a much more critical state than Florida. It's been demonstrating a stronger Biden position. He speaks a lot to these blue-collar, white, non-college educated workers. Scranton Joe does have some appeal in what we call the T in Pennsylvania, the more conservative parts of that state. Again, invested very heavily in there, gone very aggressively. The numbers look good. They've been remarkably consistent. The one state that I'm concerned about with some of these shenanigans going on with the legislative moves and perhaps court battles coming out, but I feel good about Pennsylvania. And while we do focus and
the court decisions in Pennsylvania have been being decided on the side of Biden, essentially.
Correct.
And they've all been decisions that should protect
to expand the franchise,
the integrity of the outcome.
That's a good point, and that's something that should be mindful of. We always look at Florida and say, if Trump loses Florida, he has a 98% chance he loses this thing. That's true. But if he loses Pennsylvania, it's like a 94, 95% chance. So to me, because the numbers have always been wider in Pennsylvania, we've pushed that margin as much as we can. We're going to keep doing that through Election Day. I feel better about our chances in Pennsylvania than Florida, and the net effect is essentially the same, which brings us to the backstop, which is Arizona. This is that state that we have been pressing that Sun Belt strategy on for the entire duration of the Lincoln Project's kind of efforts beginning in the late spring. That number, I would like to see it a little bit wider. The upshot has it about a +6. We think it's probably a little bit tighter than that. It's likely going to come down to Hispanic turnout, which I think I feel good about. Always been bullish and saying Latinos are late deciders, always show up late on Election Day. very rarely reflected in polling. I think that's going to bode well for Arizona and Texas.
Mike, having you here always makes me feel better.
Okay, good.
You know, that anxiety where there's nothing to do and I can't do anything about it, you make me feel better.
Okay, well, good.
Lisa, we have a caller ready to go, right?
We do. We have Sherry joining us. Sherry, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us where you are and what your question is?
And my goal is to be able to go to bed having put the first nail in Donald Trump's coffin. So tomorrow night. So Mike, I hope, but you never know with Florida, but it's been pretty good lately, except for the last one. All right. So first I want to say I've had all three initials behind my name. Florida kind of forces me to pick one because if I want to have a say in a primary, I have to. But in terms of two things, what you're saying about the Republican Party, it's not just the right wings and the white supremacists. To me, the most critical group is the unprincipled Republican senators. This would not have gotten so far off the rails if any of them had stood up and been a leader, and none of them have, not even Mitt Romney. So I'm all the way with you guys, staying all the way. I've given more money to the Lincoln Project than anything else. And I've given a lot this year, a ton. So I'm really all in for getting rid of the Trumpism, but I do believe there's a split. And I think, Jennifer, you slipped and named it the Lincoln Party by accident. But here's my question.
Subconscious.
Well, that's all right. Sometimes that's where it comes from. The judges in Minnesota that changed the rules at the last minute, which is such a no-no. Just like the Supreme Court justice, this one's even worse. That and Pennsylvania and some of the other things you alluded to, Mike, is the Lincoln Project going to be involved either directly or in some supportive way to take on those decisions, to challenge them so that we don't just let that BS stand?
You want to go with that? Yeah, go.
Let me take it.
It's all yours.
Yeah,
so that's what you're here for.
That's a really fantastic question. The short answer is yes, we will be. We already are involved. We are engaged. We were actually signed amicus brief in the Texas case in Haralson County just 48 hours ago. Our lawyers are going to be working very aggressively, and where we think we can be most helpful, of course, is also bringing along Republican plaintiffs in this and having Republican lawyers who are along with us, people like Ben Ginsburg, who's probably the most prominent Republican attorney who has stood up steadfast against all of the shenanigans that we're seeing out there. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is, depending on what happens in November 4th and beyond, we will be in those critical states with a Lincoln Project presence, with attorneys, and with overseers to make sure that the righteous Republican side of this cause is presented and fighting on behalf of greater enfranchisement to make sure that every ballot is counted.
Yeah, and you and I are still both Republicans. And we both
want.
We might, sir. We both still are desperately kind of holding on the idea that the righteous Republicans outnumber those that are not in this cycle, and we'll see what happens there. But great answer. We are involved. We're going to continue to be involved. How about our next tweet? Who has the next tweet for us? So let's see. If Trump tries to call the vote as of the 3rd or 4th, and it's obvious all votes have not been counted, what are the legal steps this country can take to make sure that those votes go forth, that those votes are counted? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I do. Look, this is a great concern, and it's one that we have been mindful of for some time. I fully expect that Donald Trump will, at some point between 8 p.m. East Coast time, at midnight, 8 p.m. or midnight
East Coast.
Midnight East Coast time. Thank you, Jennifer. Will declare victory. Okay, regardless of what's happening, what the outcome is. And the reason why is because at a certain point, the chaos is the objective. The undermining of our democratic institutions is part and parcel of what this whole thing has been about. The biggest area of concern for us is if he were to win Florida, for example, early, that would strengthen his position, at least in the early hours of this contest. Remember, there are early vote states, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, that we're looking at very closely. Any win by Joe Biden in any one of those states considerably diminishes the likelihood that Donald Trump can actually win the presidency. So for that reason, we have invested again very heavily in those states, as have others. And the likelihood of civil unrest or more chaos is going to diminish as Biden starts to win some of these, again, early count states, when we will know by 10:30 East Coast time who the winner is in each of those 5 states. Having said that, again, the strategy here is not even necessarily to win, in my opinion. The strategy is to undermine confidence in the elections.
Trump's strategy.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Trump's strategy is to undermine confidence in our electoral systems, in democracy itself, and that is absolutely what he is going to try to do. Some of the states like Pennsylvania that will have long counts, and will probably take 7 to 10 days before Pennsylvania is in a strong position to quantify who the winner of that state was, opens up where the seeds of chaos can be sown by the Trump campaign and by the president himself. We fully expect that he will do that. All that we can do is hold the media accountable and demand and require that nobody call any of these races until absolutely every vote is counted and certified, and fight to make sure that this narrative that the president has already begun, and his surrogates, by the way, have already begun to set, is contained and bracketed, as we say, to make sure that the integrity of the election is not held fast until every vote is counted. And my hope is that none of these media outlets will be calling any of these races until we are definitive about what the outcome is going to be.
For Donald Trump, there are only 2 possible outcomes to this. Either he will win and be declared the winner, or he will be declared the loser, and he will spend the rest of his life explaining to you that he should have been the winner.
That was stolen from him.
That it was stolen from him, exactly. And we all have to understand that. Like, we have to stay cool.
Yes.
And another reminder, it's the Secretary of State in your state who will certify the outcome in your state. It's not Donald Trump on election night. As long as we're aware of that and we stay calm, and to your point, that the media does the same, we'll be okay with this in the long run.
Yeah,
Lisa, do we have more callers?
Yeah, one last point. I think it's also really important to remind people he did the same thing last time. He didn't expect to win in 2016. He had laid all the same groundwork for complaining about how the election had been stolen from him, and then he sort of had to backpedal and convince people that it was a legitimate outcome because he won. So this isn't anything new. We need to look at the pattern of this guy. He's done this not just when he's been running, but he's done it when other people have been running. And it's always going to be with him unless he wins or the person he's supporting wins. He's always going to say that the election was stolen, and that doesn't happen in this country. Okay, let's go to our next caller. Melissa, welcome to the show. Where are you calling from, and what's your question?
I'm calling from Oahu, Hawaii. My question isn't, yes. Thank you guys for all you do to start out. And Mike, you just do not know how you calm my nerves. So I stalk you as much as I can for my fact checks and everything. My question actually is, I'm 39, so I've been voting for a long time, and we've never really had to watch our votes as much as we have to. I'm not necessarily worried. In Hawaii, we just came mail-in ballots, but more for the mainland, when we're tracking our ballots, which we've never done before. So while we're tracking them, if it's showing that they're going to throw out people's ballots in the mainland, if they've tracked them, do they have any course of action that they also can join in with? I know your lawyers and everything are working with it, but something for the citizens to say, no, I tracked my ballot should count, and something that we can also fight this rigged election that somehow we've all joined into with him.
Yeah, well, first, now we have a friend in Oahu. Let's all go to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Now we know where we're going to go to relax.
You have to get
now we know where we're going to relax when this is over.
You have to get him out first.
We know that in some. We have to get. Well, we're committed. We're committed. So there are avenues for people to take if they've learned that their mail-in ballot has a problem. You can talk about that more.
There are 27 states which have expanded their vote by mail processes, largely as a result of the pandemic, trying to make sure that more people can be engaged in the process. One of the challenges with that is most of these states have little or no experience with vote by mail, which is very aggressive, and it's very time and labor intensive to actually make sure we count these votes. Another reason why the accuracy of the count may take a little bit longer than we would like. Having said that, most of these states have what we call a curing process, which is if you track your vote online and it has not been counted, you can follow up with the county registrar wherever you are at, or the Secretary of State in your state, to find out how you can cure that ballot. Perhaps the signature didn't match, perhaps the ballot was open when it was received, there may have been something that had spilled the ballot. Regardless, there's normally a way where you can actually cure that vote. That's what you should be doing. Everybody watching, and check with friends who voted by mail. Follow up and make sure there is still plenty of time to do this. You're going to have to go in to cure that ballot, but it's far better to have that awareness and go in and actually make sure your vote is counted than not. So I think that was the question as it related to the curing process. The good news is with technology is most of these 27 states do have some ability to track as to whether or not your vote was counted, and most, not all, but most have the ability to course correct or cure, as we call it. And everybody should be very vigilant, not only for yourselves, but for your friends and family and other people that you've gotten to vote.
Right. Great answer. Very complete. I love that. So our next caller is Janet. Janet, you're with us. Where are you from, Janet? And what is your question?
I'm Matamidi, Minnesota. And I'm just north of the state capitol in St. Paul. I'm one of those white suburban women that is not voting for Trump. So
welcome to the club.
Thank you. I've been a huge fan of yours, and I have been donating like crazy and I've been following you. I've been actually, you guys have been keeping me calm through this craziness, and I've been joining in your Thursday evening sessions. But I'm on a lot of platforms, social media platforms, with women around the country. And they're kind of in a frenzy today because there's a lot of these pollsters coming on different talk shows talking about what happened in 2016. There's going to be a red wave tomorrow, that, Democrats generally vote early or mail in, and that we can expect a red wave tomorrow. It's sending everybody into a frenzy. And I just remember at one of the calls or one of the Thursday evening sessions with you that you were shooting for that 4%. I think, is that correct, 4%, to move over Republicans into the Biden camp. And I'm thinking I'm going to be on these platforms this afternoon. Actually, I'm text banking this afternoon at 4:00 with a group of women. So
great.
What could you guys give me some info that I could be like pushing out to these platforms to kind of settle some people down a little bit, take a deep breath as we're going into tomorrow?
Well, let me supplement that question before you answer it, Mike. We saw some numbers late last week showing that in early voting in some states, as much as 13% of Republicans who voted early said they cast their ballot for Biden.
Right.
You think that's real? And does that help with what Janet's looking for?
Yeah, it absolutely is real. We have internally, we call this the Bannon line, named after Steve Bannon, who's been an advisor to Donald Trump. And the reason why we've called that 4%, again, 4% of Republicans moving away from Donald Trump puts Joe Biden in a very strong position to win. It's not just that we believe that, it's that Steve Bannon agrees with it. So Trump's people agree with it. We agree with it. Most of the polling has this number of Republicans moving away from Trump and to Biden, as Jennifer just said, at 13% nationally. It's more than three times the Bannon line. In most of the battleground states, we have doubled that number. So let's talk about what it means for Election Day. Look, take a deep breath. There is going to be a sizable segment of Republicans showing up on Election Day. This is a little bit anomalous. I have spent my entire career working with Republicans and spent many gazillions of dollars training Republican voters to vote by mail. This changed all in one election cycle when Donald Trump started casting doubt on the integrity of the vote by mail process, and most Republicans are going to now show up on Election Day when the vast majority of Democrats are going to have voted by mail or voting early, with two key groups that I want to talk about. But remember, there is going to be a sizable, I guess you could call it a red wave. In the data space, we just talk about it being a large number of Republicans showing up. But for this wave to actually overcome all of the tremendous amount of early voting that has already happened benefiting Biden and the Democrats, it would have to be of a size and segment that is probably larger than the amount of Republicans that are actually out there. And keep in mind, when you have enormous turnout like this, it very rarely, if ever, happens in an isolated incident. Turnout is going to be high across the board, but we will probably never see an election this historically high, including 2008 when we had 137 million voters. I believe that we may actually hit upwards of 157, 160 million voters. If that happens, 20 million new voters, okay, keep this in mind, 20 million new voters, 20% of which did not vote in 2016. Either they skipped the election because they didn't like the choices, or they're new voters. That's an enormous number. You add that, or subtract that rather, from the 77,000 votes that Donald Trump won by in 5 different states in 2016, I think the numbers look pretty darn good. So really quickly, let me end with this. There's going to be a lot of Republican voters showing up on election day. For the first time in my lifetime, there will be Republicans that are going to have to wait in line 3, 4, 5 hours to vote because they're going to have to socially distance and wait. We'll see how that plays out. But more importantly is this. You are still going to see a strong, perhaps historic number of Black voters and Hispanic voters who are decidedly late deciding voters and election day voters overwhelmingly, especially Hispanic voters. So you're going to see that mitigate this quote-unquote red wave. So look, there's going to be a lot of Republicans voting. We don't have a problem with any American voting. But mathematically, I want to put it in perspective. The sheer size of what has already happened needs to be balanced out because it is so overwhelmingly Biden and Democratic vote. You could look at them as 2 different waves or just 2 different segments voting in different manners. We're going to have high turnout that benefits Biden unequivocally, undeniably, especially with the demographics that are going to be showing up in historic and record numbers. Hope that was clear.
Yeah, it was very clear. And you actually answered what was going to be my final question for you at the end of all this.
Yeah.
And so that's terrific.
Okay.
Lisa, we have more, right?
Yep, we have one final question for Mike, and I want to kind of fold a question that I have for you into it. So the question from a viewer is, what is Mike Madrid's final Electoral College prediction? What would cause a Biden win to be smaller or larger? I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic too. So my additional component of this question is, can you give us a couple bellwether states that we should be watching that will be indicative of a trend that we might see flowing through the rest of the night? Now, looking back at 2016, we could see what those were, but I think until very late in the night, a lot of us were still in denial that it was actually happening. So what are the states we should be looking at this time?
So before you answer that, let me see if I can pass the Mike Madrid pop quiz. Western Virginia.
Virginia, but the western portion of Virginia will be the answer on where to look. Let me explain why this is the case. Virginia is an early count state. We're going to get some East Coast numbers in pretty quickly. And what we're going to see is the margin of victory between Joe Biden. Joe Biden is going to win Virginia, okay? The reason why I consider it a bellwether is because Virginia is really constituted. Somebody said earlier today, it's really like New Jersey and Alabama in one state. What you're looking for is the margins by with which Biden is actually winning when that rural vote comes in. A little bit esoteric, a little bit abstract, but that's what I'm going to be watching on as the polls close. If you see Biden up by 2, 3, 4 points, it will probably be a longer night than we would like. If he's up by 9, 10, 11 points, I think we could have a very decisive victory going into the Rust Belt. Why is that? Because rural Virginia, the demographics, non-college educated white rural voters, looks very similar to what you're going to see in margins in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Iowa and some of the Great Lakes states. It's going to be a very strong indicator, okay? So that's what I'm looking for early on. Will it be definitive? No, of course it won't. There's going to be some variations, but that is something that should give you some solace in terms of understanding what that's going to look like in terms of the broader electoral map earliest on election night. So I'm going to try. Can I evade the last part about the predictions, or are you guys going to force my hand on that a little bit?
If you'd like to,
I think you have to address the Electoral College somehow. Yeah.
Let me say this, okay? And again, I'm not in the predictions business, and there's no win by actually making this prediction because right or wrong, unless I hit it on the head, someone's going to say something critical about it. I believe there's a pretty strong roadmap for Joe Biden to get to 320 electoral votes.
Wow.
I think that's probably where it's going to end up in that range. Interestingly, and again, don't blame on me on Twitter, but there's a greater likelihood that this could become a landslide for Joe Biden than there is a likelihood that Donald Trump wins. It's just a probability, and it's just a statistic. Take it for what it's worth. There is absolutely a chance for Donald Trump to win. I'm not saying that that is not the case, but it's simple math and probability, okay? My personal inclination is I believe we're sitting at about a 320, maybe even upwards of a 340 for Joe Biden heading into Election Day.
So, but that's a probability that is built on the assumption that all of you are voting, that if you haven't voted yet, you will get out there tomorrow and make sure that your vote is cast and your voice is heard. If you can't decide to bag out now. We need you out there. Mike, it has been terrific having you
Thanks
here.
for having me.
It is always great
be
to
with
have
you
you
guys.
here. I know how much everybody in the audience enjoys it just as much as Lisa and I do. And so, Mike, thanks so much. So I want to move on now and remind you all of this very important tool, especially for those of you who are still going to be heading out to your polling places today or tomorrow. The Lincoln Project has been partnering with CSAY 2020, csay2020.com. It is a free and anonymous platform where you as a voter can report instances of voter suppression in real time. You can report any form of suppression or voter intimidation, with things like misinformation, malfunctioning voting machines. Here is a witness report from a voter in Eastern Ohio. This is a real report that was sent in. Trump signs and people who were electioneering too close to the polls and trying to intimidate voters in the parking lot of the only early voting place in that county, in Stark County. That's the kind of a report you can make through csay2020.com. This is a super cool website, and it's really easy to use on your phone. Just go to csay2020.com, select the type of incident, write a quick description, your location, the time and the date. It's really important to have that information. If at all possible, also include a photo or video. That makes it much easier for the issue to be addressed quickly and efficiently. And then you click submit. As soon as you do that, you, voting officials, the media will see where and what is happening so that it can be corrected and addressed. As you can see, there are already a lot of reports that have been filed through csay2020.com. So please join us, be a champion for democracy, help us as we crowdsource ballot integrity here. For true voting emergencies, if there's something happening in the moment, if you fear for your safety, if they're closing the polling place while you're still online, people are blocking your access to the polling places, you can call 866-OUR-VOTE. 866-OUR-VOTE. That's part of the csay2020.com operation. That number is listed on the website if you need it. But one more time, it's 866-OUR-VOTE. And that is for if there are true in the moment emergency that need to be addressed immediately. For example, if you fear for your safety, if your polling place is being shut down while people are still online, those types of things. csay2020.com, 866-OUR-VOTE. It's a great opportunity for you to be part of the army of Americans that is trying to preserve the integrity of our ballot. And that's it. That's a wrap for today. That has been a full show. That went by so fast for me, Lisa. I'm so glad that you are back, that you are with us, and that you were part of this today. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was great fun. I loved hearing so many voices from the people who have been watching, and what a group of bright, engaged, informed voters who have been following the show and sending in questions and doing their selfies. It's really exciting to see so many people who are really getting involved in the election this year and making sure that they understand the issues, they understand the candidates, and they've gotten out there and they're encouraging others to do that. We probably all know a couple of people who we could make that last phone call to, shoot that last text or email, double, triple check. I've driven my poor sons just batshit crazy, making sure that they've sent in their absentee ballots, and I know they have now. So just make one more push for a couple of people. I know it doesn't seem like a lot on an individual basis, but when we all do that, those votes add up so quickly. They make a critical difference. So this is our last shot, folks. We've got until polls close tomorrow to get this right and get us back on track. So get out to the polls and thank you. And thank you, Jennifer. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is a great show. We should be doing this all the time, having people call in and let them lead the conversation. It's been terrific. Thanks again, Lisa. And a huge thank you to all of you, to the folks who have been tweeting their questions, those of you who called in and participated. I'm so sorry we couldn't get to every single one of you. Just not enough time. we're grateful for your participation, not just in this show, but in the process. And of course, a huge thank you to my Lincoln Project co-founder, Mike Madrid. Always fascinating, always entertaining. Sometimes the facts are coming a little faster than I can grab them. I always say about Mike, I'm pretty sure he has a computer chip lodged somewhere in his brain. But thank you so much, Mike, for being part of this show as well. And a big thank you to all of you. Before we go, I would like to share the very newest ad that has come out from the Lincoln Project. It is a beautiful ad, and I want to make sure that you all get to see it before we sign off.
Shine and see. You know, I wish I had somebody to help me sing this. America. I love you, America. You see, my God, he done shed his face on thee. And you ought to love him for it, because he crowned that good. He told me he would. Every brotherhood from sea to shine and see. Oh Lord, I thank you, Lord.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Vote for America. Our nation is strong. We are strong, though, not because of our politicians, but because of our people. We're not strong because we bully or hate or divide or attack. Our strength as a people comes from our heart, from our unity. Most of all, it comes from our vote. Our power comes from our vote. There are more of us than there are of them. We are stronger and better than Donald Trump will ever be. This is the moment. This is our moment. Please, if you have not yet voted, get out there tomorrow and vote. Thank you so much for being with us. I can't wait to see you again on Wednesday. This is Vote for America on LPTV.
This is America, and it's hurting. Right now, we're getting knocked down by the very people who should be lifting us up. Our families and our neighbors are sick, and we're being lied to. They want to scare us into believing it has to be this way. It doesn't. In the past, when change was needed, we've stepped up. Now, it's time to step up again. This moment is not about Democrat or Republican. It's about being on the right side of history. We must set aside our differences, stand together, united, and ask, what can I do to help? It's time to put people ahead of politics, to put country over party. It's time to vote for America.
Cynthia in Bellingham, Washington. The stock market is not the economy. Its value is mostly made up of the top 50 corporations. Main Street is full of close signs. And the evictions and bankruptcies are just beginning. Joe Biden has been successful at inheriting another Republican recession. Vote Joe Biden. Save America.
I'm a Republican and I'm voting for Biden because he needs to be able to heal this country. Our country is broken. Our hearts are broken. Our minds are being broken. And Joe Biden will be the one to unite us, whether we're black, brown, white, whatever color, religion you are. Biden will be able to put this country back together.
Let's remember that Georgia, first of all, meets all the criteria that we look for in a Sunbelt state, right? There's these three, the magic three numbers that we're looking for. The first is significant number of college-educated white voters. This is the demographic group that moves away from Republicans the fastest. The second is the 65-plus group, which is an older representation amongst senior citizens who are directly impacted by COVID in a way that younger people are not. And then the third, and this is really important, is there's a very significant African-American population. The black vote, clearly energized, clearly mobilized, was in 2018. I think you're going to see record number turnout in a presidential election. And those three criteria tell us Georgia's a place to be playing. Of course, the polls suggest exactly the same thing. It's a 50-50 toss-up. And we think that Georgia's, we can bring this one home.